This is Ira Gorlick, and this is the second part of the applying Hayek to the 21st century. So one of the things that Hayek talked a lot about was the pricing system as information. And here are some quotes. Fundamentally, in a system in which the knowledge of the relevant facts is dispersed among many people, prices can act to coordinate the separate actions of different people. We must look at the price system as such a mechanism for communicating information. So this is actually brilliant when you think about it. Remember I talked about distributed information and meta communication. Well, pricing system then becomes meta communication. So what we're saying is that if there's all this information distributed throughout the network, throughout the community, then prices become a way to coordinate these separate actions. I think this is brilliant and one of his most enlightened approaches. Two more quotes. The most significant fact about this system is the economy of knowledge with which it operates, or how little the individual participants need to know in order to be able to take the right action. In abbreviated form, by a kind of symbol, only the most essential information is passed on, and passed on only to those concerned. It's meta-communication. It's the classic example of meta-communication. Had packet network and distributed processing and meta-communication been around in Hayek's time, I am almost sure that he would see the connection. But this is new, and in fact, remember before I talked a little about this, I think this is why information now has become such an important part of economic discussion. So let me use Hayek's example here. He used the example of the market for tin. Assume that somewhere in the world a new opportunity for tin was found, or that one of the sources of supply for tin has been eliminated, making tin scarce. He said it does not matter, and it is not very significant that it does not matter, which of these two causes has made tin scarce. All that the users of tin need to know is that the price of tin has gone up, and they must economize it. See what he's saying here? So pricing then becomes a meta-communication for something. All right, the price has gone up. That means tin has become scarce. And we're going to talk about supply and demand in another lecture, and it's very important. But I think you basically should know about law of supply and demand. So price becomes then a classic meta-communication. He said that there is no need for the great majority of tin consumers to know why this has happened. And going back to our example of the blind men exploring the elephants, even if people think they know, they still may not know. If only some of them fill the need for tin with still other sources, the effect will rapidly spread throughout the whole economic system and influence not only all the users of tin, but also those for its substitutes and the substitutes of those substitutes, the supply of all the things made of tin and their substitutes and so on. And all this without a great majority of those instrumental in bringing about those substitutions knowing anything at all about the original cause of these changes. Now, again, it's brilliant. And recognize, again, this is where central planners would totally fail. That a central planner may make some decision here about how to replace it, but what Hayek is saying, no central planning. Let the marketplace have its will. Let the pricing system then be the meta communication from which the community has its say. The whole acts as one market, not because any of its members survey the whole field, but because their limited individual fields of vision sufficiently overlap so that through many intermediaries, the relevant information is communicated to all. Again, I do the quote here because he says it so eloquently and so beautifully. This is meta communication. So now I make a linkage to packet networks. It is more than a metaphor to describe the price system as a kind of machinery for registering change, or a system of telecommunication which enables individual producers to watch merely the movement of a few pointers, as an engineer might watch the hands of a few dials, in order to adjust their activities to changes of which they may never know more than is reflected in the price movement. I mean, again, he was way ahead of his time. he even links this, he sees it that it is some system of telecommunications. Again, in the 1950s and 60s and 70s when he was around, there was no packet network, there was no metacommunication, so he couldn't really relate to it exactly, but clearly it makes sense to someone like me. So let's apply what I'm saying. We have the internet and we have commerce. The internet as a distributed architecture, commerce as a distributed architecture. The metacommunication and the internet is TCP/IP, end-to-end agreements. The metacommunication in commerce is the invisible hand, culture, language, civil laws, and natural laws. Do you see? In my mind, this is perfect. This is the way that we can take Hayek and apply him to the 21st century. So let me look at these metacommunications levels. So here's the distributed network with the communication channels, and then we overlay a metacommunication of language. We might overlay a metacommunication of culture. We might overlay a metacommunications of religion. Do you see how all this would work? Do you see? And then all of these metacommunication layers would all intermarry into religion, culture, language. They all fit together and form sort of a cloud. And this goes, even use the word iCloud, a cloud of metacommunication around the network. And that is what we need to focus on. Hopefully this makes sense. It makes sense to me, and I'd be really interested to hear what you have to say about it in the discussion. For the next lecture, I'm going to switch gears a little bit and get off of Hayek and information and talk a little about market volatility and equilibrium. Thank you.